Um, Welcome to our internship webinar. It's good to have you here. We're excited to see who might come and join us next year. So it's good to see you here today. We are recording, but don't worry, you or your names will be visible in the recording, and we'll stop when we come to Q&As. This is just so those who can't be here today can watch this webinar and catch up with how to apply afterwards. And do have a look on YouTube if you want to catch up with anything that we've said today after the meeting. Do ask questions. So your video and chat is switched off just for privacy, but you can ask questions in the Q&A section, and it works very similarly to chat. So you can just press Q&A and you'll be able to ask a question there, and we'll come to them towards the end of the webinar. So it's good to have you with us, and I'm just going to stop spotlighting myself now for a while so that we can all introduce ourselves. So my name is Alex Claire Young, and I'm the Campaigns and Church Engagement Officer for JPIT, and I also line manage the interns. Um, and we're each also going to share one justice issue that's on our mind today. And the justice issue that's on my mind today is disability access. I've been at the wheelchair shop getting some new wheels today, so that's got me thinking about that. And I'm going to pass on to Simeon.
Hi everyone, my name's Simeon Mitchell. I've been the team leader of JPIT for about 4 years now and working in the team for 8, so I've been around for a while. And today, the justice issue that's been particularly on my mind has been around refugee family reunion. We're currently running a campaign to highlight the changes that the government is making around that, and to express concern and to coordinate church leaders and other faith leaders to speak together about that issue. So I've been thinking quite a bit about that over the last few weeks. Shall I hand over to Erica?
Hiya, my name's Erica. I am the communications intern this year, and an issue that I have been thinking about today is particularly around the conflict in the Middle East. I've been putting together a blog around how that's impacting the oil situation for us in the UK. So yeah, thinking about that today, and I will pass it on to Thomas.
Hello, I'm Thomas. I'm the intern with a responsibility for the Constituency Action Network, which is JPIT's network of churches building positive and purposeful relationships with their MPs. And the justice issue on my mind is the Rosebank oil field and the campaign to stop it being approved by the government, which we support, and have just released some materials today about craftivist approaches to talk to your MP about stopping that. And I'll hand back to Alex.
Thank you all for sharing. So we're going to start our time together by just sharing a very short video to introduce JPIT a little more for you.
We are
Paul,
Thomas,
Simeon,
Rue,
Erica,
Adam,
Steve,
Alex.
and we are the Joint Public Issues team, supporting churches to work and pray for peace and justice across the Baptist Union, the Methodist Church and the United Reformed Church. Our work spans 6 hopes that we have for society.
A just economy that enables the flourishing of all life, a world that actively works for peace, a society that welcomes the stranger, a society where the poorest and most marginalised are at the centre, a planet where our environment is renewed, and a politics characterised by listening, kindness and truthfulness.
So that was just to give you a little flavour of JPIT's kind of purpose, some of the folks who are involved in addition to the people you see on the screen now, and some of the kind of issues and the ways that that JPIT works. So just to say a bit more about the team, as you heard, our purpose is to help our churches, particularly the Baptist, Methodist and United Reformed churches, to work together for peace and justice through listening, learning, praying, speaking and acting on public policy issues. So what does that look like in practice? Well, there's kind of 4 types of activity that we get engaged with as a team. The first is around influencing and trying to change policies and express concerns and contribute to the thinking of decision makers about those different issues, particularly around those 6 hopes for society, whether that's through writing submissions to policy consultations or being part of big campaigns or mass lobbies of Parliament, through having individual meetings with parliamentarians sometimes, or more often it's through enabling and mobilizing people in our local churches to take action on those issues and to raise those concerns at a local level as well as at a national level. So that's influencing, trying to influence policy change. The second big area of our work is around resourcing churches, resourcing church members to think about different justice issues, to understand them better, to link them to their faith, to bring them into their worship, to their mission, and then to think about how they could respond appropriately. And there's a whole range of different ways in which we can respond to the call of justice on our lives. The third big area of work for the team is around engagement, engaging people to share the message that we think political engagement is integral to Christian discipleship. We're trying to make links into all different parts of our churches and our denominations, make links to young people in our churches, to those who have lived experience of the issues that we're working on, and think about how we might creatively communicate our work and engage more people with it, holding events, creating podcasts, all sorts of other ways that we try and engage people. And then the fourth of the areas of our activity is around thought leadership. Trying to help people to really think through the kind of knotty issues and the big issues in society, and the things that are in our world, going on in our world, going on in our news, and make sense of them, bring wisdom to them, and create spaces where people can think together and hear from each other around some of those issues, as well as writing material and creating events where people can exchange views and really go deeper into some of the big issues that are facing our world at the moment. So there's some of the activities that we get engaged with as a team and some of the things that form our day-to-day work. But what's it really like to work in the team? We're going to hear in a moment from Thomas and Erica, who are going to talk a bit about what attracted them to apply to be interns with JPIT and their journey, and then a bit more about what their work has involved. So I think we're going to start with Thomas.
Sure, thank you, Simeon. Well, my background is that I grew up in a Christian family in the Church of England, and a Christian family that was quite justice focused, and my dad was a big influence on this. I can remember him taking me on a march against climate change, I think in 2014, which feels quite a long time ago now, and there was a very big polar bear prop outside St Mary le Strand in London, and that really captivated me. I remember it very clearly, and talking about it at school, and people weren't as interested as I was. And I remember noticing that was something distinct, that I definitely had a sense of justice. And over time, that linked in with my faith. I kept going to church in my teens, but really it was at university, I'd say, where I met like-minded people, both Christian and non-Christian, who showed me how I could live out my faith and my justice and my politics in lots of ways together. A key moment of that was taking part in a non-violent protest at my university, where there was a camp in support of a ceasefire in Israel-Palestine in 2024. It was really lively, it was very active, it built community for students, for academics, for local people. And there was one particular Friday, I remember really clearly, where a group of Jewish students celebrated the start of Shabbat. And next to them, a group of Muslim students prayed Friday afternoon prayers. And it was very sunny, and there was lots of food, and people were talking about peace and justice. And it was a very deep spiritual experience for me. I pray day, a very strong prayer, and it's still a deep well that I draw from when I'm feeling the world is very unjust, and I smile about it. I think that's a story that shows those two things coming together. And that's what really led me to thinking about applying. I wanted something that embodied those two things, and then more specifically something that was church-based. I wanted to try out what it was like to work in a faith space, and whether I liked working in a church environment versus, say, a public sector context or a charity context. I wanted to be based in London. I like the idea of working in an office in London with lots of people, especially working between the three churches. That ecumenical nature of the work is definitely something I wanted to explore, make connections, meet similar people and lots of very different people between the three churches. There's real diversity there. And I wanted to be stretched. I knew that I had the confidence to go and do it, and that it reflected who I was in some ways and my values, but that it would be something that would stretch me in different ways. And that's a really important part of what an internship is for, right? So I think that sums up why I applied. Erica, do you have a similar story?
Well, I also grew up in a Christian household, and I was, I'd say, interested in politics from a fairly young age. I mean, sort of early secondary school for me was some conversations with some of my friends who didn't really want to talk to me about politics, but I wanted to talk to them about the possible impact of Brexit. And yeah, so I was not entirely directly involved in the sort of justice space until I was about 15, and some friends of mine needed some volunteers to help steward one of the climate strikes that they were organising in Leicester city centre, and from that day, I was so overwhelmed by how amazing the atmosphere was, so lively, and so it just seemed like something that I absolutely had to get involved in. So I started joining in the strikes. If you weren't aware, the Fridays for Future movement was the one that was inspired by Greta Thunberg's school strikes, to encourage school children to not attend school once a month or as often as they could on Fridays, to protest government inaction on climate. And I learned so much through that about organising and meeting new people, and it was an amazing experience. And I gradually also started at that point to connect kind of politics with my faith. So because some friends and church connections knew that I was involved in the climate strikes, I was asked to speak in my church about how I got involved, and it really got me thinking about how politics and my faith sort of overlap, and that led me to do more work in kind of the Leicester and Leicestershire church sphere, talking to some youth groups and talking to the church leaders in Leicester as well about the importance of ambitious climate policy. So I learned a lot through that. And then because life gets busy, I wasn't as actively involved, particularly after the COVID pandemic and at university, but I did start to develop a real interest from a more academic perspective of studying and critically analysing politics and social movements. So I studied history at university, and I did a lot around histories of environments and anti-colonialism and various social movements, as well as political philosophy. And all of those topics kind of really led me to feel like I wanted to move away from just studying what was happening in the past, although it was really interesting to me, into something that was more applicable to things that were going on in the present. And that was where I was sort of starting in terms of thinking about what I wanted to do after university. So when I saw the JPIT internship come up, I wasn't particularly hopeful for the majority of my final year. There wasn't anything that was appealing to me in terms of graduate roles. But when the internship came up as an opportunity, I really felt like it was a great combination of aspects of things I wanted to explore. I wasn't entirely sure of the career I wanted to go into, but I thought this was an amazing chance to move to London and get involved in so many different campaigns that I was passionate about, particularly around climate, but also expanding my knowledge of other types of campaigning and developing my skills in other ways. So that was my context. I believe I'm passing back to Alex now.
Thank you so much, Erica and Thomas, for sharing your experiences. I am popping us back on Spotlight again now so that I can ask you a few questions about your experiences. So I guess one of the things that's different about an internship compared to a job is that there are kind of learning and development opportunities as part of an internship. What learning and development opportunities have you had in these internships?
Yeah, I think one of the things for me I've really enjoyed actually is the opportunity to participate in lots of different events. So I think I'm quite a people person, and there's because there's three different churches, there's three different sets of church events: youth events, annual assemblies, retreats, conferences of different kinds. And something about being an intern is you can, we have found several interesting opportunities and said, oh, this would be helpful for the wider team to get some broader knowledge on a particular issue. So, for example, on Israel-Palestine work by other churches, or I'm going to be attending something about debt in a few weeks and think about our economy work based on Christian Aid's work on debt. So both participating as an attendee in lots of different experiences, experiencing lots of different conferences or events, but also delivering workshops. I've delivered some workshops to different young people, and in our different church key events in the calendar, there's quite a lot of different opportunities, and that stretches around communication and working as a team, and doing your own research, contributing to how that feeds back into the team. So I've really enjoyed that. I think it's also just that networking and ability to build connections, especially if you're interested in church or charity sector or justice focused roles in general. And then doing all of that exciting stuff plus all of your internal admin and personal time management, that's been a really helpful development opportunity for me to kind of make sure it's all in the right balance, which is probably something everyone says, but it's very true.
Thanks so much. How about you, Erica?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd echo all the things that Thomas said. I think there's lots of really great opportunities in terms of events and things. Just thinking about other opportunities that we've had this year so far. We've been part of the Methodist Young Adult Leadership Year, which has been a great way to meet other young adults, particularly in the Methodist Church, but then we've also been looped into young adult networks in the other denominations as well. But through the Leadership Year scheme, you also get a mentor. My mentor has been particularly helpful. Fortunately, she lives quite close to me, so I've been able to speak to her in person, and she works in the charity sector, and it's been really invaluable to have conversations with her about how I'm doing in my current role and things I could be doing, and also conversations about next year and moving forward. So kind of those one-to-one opportunities to speak with people, and like Thomas said, the kind of networking there is really, really helpful, and I'm still sort of exploring what exactly that will look like for me. So it's really beneficial to be able to be in contact with such a range of people across the denominations and then also outside the denominations. And then you also get to set personal targets. So I particularly was interested, for example, in developing some skills around quantitative data, because I'm from a humanities background and was terrified of working with numbers or anything that wasn't written, reading and writing, and that's been really helpful. And then we've also just begun our mid-year projects, which are completely like independent research projects or campaigns that you decide what you want to do, and that's been really exciting to start on as well.
Thanks so much. It's good for me to hear you both reflecting on those things as well. So we're all learning a bit today about how we experience different things. Once I finally got that video started, the intro video, it shared that JPIT has 6 hopes for society, and I was wondering which of JPIT's 6 hopes matter most, if one does matter most to both of you.
Alex, the first test is that you have to remind everyone what the 6 hopes are off the top of your head.
Oh, now that is a test. So politics, economy, poverty, peace. Politics, economy, poverty, peace, environment, and refugees. And it
Very
is
good.
definitely something that grows with time. I've been working for JPIT for just under a year, and I still have to think a little bit.
I
Go on
think
then,
that's
Thomas.
sorry, I think that's the beauty of it being really broad. I was going to say I do naturally draw to, I think both of us do actually, quite climatey and environmental focused bits of work. As Erica said, she's got a background in that, and my example was a big polar bear, so that seems very natural. But I've actually been really interested in a lot of the work we've done on Christian nationalism and authoritarianism and the far right more broadly, which is this big nexus of stuff that threads across loads of them, across kind of, it's a peace issue, it's about democracy, it's about the economy, and it's about how we think about refugees and migrants to Britain. So those connections between the different advocacy areas is really important if you're going to do effective campaigning, build alliances, see the opportunities for where they are. So I think it's good to see the hopes as a basis to build from. They're not trying to pigeonhole us, which is something it was very helpful to be told, because I can remember thinking, oh, this is a lot, and I don't know if all of me cares about all of them all the time, but that's okay. Yeah, that's what I'd say. What do you think, Erica?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, they're all interconnected. I feel like I've been particularly interested in and thinking about the ideas around politics being characterized by listening, kindness, and truthfulness, particularly in the run up to the local elections in May. And also, like I mentioned, my mid-year project, which I'm particularly focusing on generative AI and justice debates around that. So I've been thinking in that regard about how we create narratives of truth and fake news and all that kind of thing. The role of the media, which also plays into my role as the communications intern. And I think also that idea of politics, which listens as well, and how we can platform people or encourage people with lived experience to be part of our campaigns rather than just speaking on their behalf all the time. And also being willing to listen to people that have different perspectives to you. And I feel like I've come on a bit of a journey with that as well. So, yeah.
Thank you both. A real mix there. And you're about halfway through your internship. So what's your kind of one top thing that you've done or experienced so far? Let's change it up a bit and start with Erica this time, just to put you on the spot. What's your top thing?
Yeah, sure. I have to say my favorite thing, I think, still was the conference. So we ran our Justice Seekers conference called For Goodness Sake, which was kind of come up with because, everyone is really angry and frustrated at the state of the world, and kind of how we channel that and what we do with that kind of despair and lament, and how we channel that into productive kind of activism and working together. And on the day itself, there was such an amazing energy. And it was a real privilege because I was doing the communications on the day as well, and taking videos with people and having chats with people. I got to record various conversations, which were just really uplifting, hearing about real people who really do care. And it's not all just completely like you're talking about campaigns into a social media vacuum, at least from my perspective. And it was just really encouraging to hear people's different stories of why they were so passionate, and to feel their energy for different causes in the room was really great. What about you, Thomas?
Yeah, I think currently looking forward, I'm enjoying starting my mid-year project. Eric, you talked about yours. Mine is going to be looking at the Fossil Fuel Phase Out Summit, which is happening in Colombia next month at the end of April, and thinking about as my own little campaign what areas do I really focus on, and how do I think about a communication strategy for that. I'm really enjoying thinking about that at the moment. I think of a single event that we've done. The conference was a highlight. I really enjoyed a day in January where I spoke to some Methodist young adults in London. So this is one of these events I mentioned of speaking to young people, which I've found is a real passion that I developed over the year. And I liked it so much because the organisation was very chaotic, and that was not my fault. That was due to many things happening in the background and staff illness, and it meant that on the day everyone around me was quite worried about it, and I was quite proud that I did my bit quite well, and I got some really good feedback from colleagues, and was told I was very helpful as well as informative, and that's a great mix. I like a practical, logistical running an event and delivering really meaningful stuff, and several of the young people seemed really inspired to think about how justice can work in their church, and to think about a new justice issue I introduced to them, which was about land rights and land use, which is something I'm quite interested in, which is not something we often think about in the UK. Yeah, that was a real highlight for me, I think.
Thanks, both. And it's probably just worth saying that there's lots of different ways in which the things that go well get recorded as well. And one of our colleagues in the Connectional team noted something on Thomas's wall. So we each have walls about his contribution to that experience. So there are lots of ways to connect across the team as well, and to gain experiences, skills, and feedback for moving forward. So one last question that is about moving forward. What next for you both?
I suppose I should probably go first. I'm still not entirely sure, like I vaguely mentioned earlier, but I am really keen to stay in London and get a job. I would love to ideally work in political campaigns. I've found that really, really enjoyable, working on campaigns, and kind of bring the communications skills that I've developed over this year into a very practical kind of context that can directly be connected with the overall sort of political goals of a team. I found that really useful. But I'm also trying to build my wider portfolio, I suppose, in more transferable skills, which I could take into a wider array of roles. So, for example, I'm trying to build up more writing and journalism experience, as well as my communications, which I do for the team, and different ways that I could approach that to get more experience. And project management through like the mid-year project, or through facilitating the conference, and things like that. So yeah, ideally political campaigns, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I'm not entirely sure, and I think that's common. Having talked to some former interns, I don't think they all knew what was next, and that's a good thing. It means I've felt quite open to apply for different things. I've applied for the National Health Services graduate scheme as a general management experience public sector scheme that would be a good thing. But I'm also looking at campaign roles, a bit like Erica. There are roles within our church structures, within the three churches, that do appeal around justice, or around more practical things like safeguarding. I'm looking into at the moment. But if not, I'm quite excited about the possibility of a few months off, possibly spending some time on a pilgrimage, or traveling, or doing something outdoorsy. I liked coming to London to work in an office, and now I think it might be time to leave the city again.
Thank you both so much. I hope you're not going to leave the city quite yet, Thomas. We need you here for a little while more. still. I'm going to take the pressure off Thomas and Erica now a little bit. But there are lots of interesting things that you can do after an internship. So we've been talking recently as we come into our 20th year about things that former interns do. And we found out that former interns are public policy advisors, public sector employees, working and living in new monastic communities, working for charities like Hope for the Future and All We Can and Just Money, doing parliamentary work, working for denominational teams, in ministry or training for ministry, or engaging in further studies in politics, ecology, and theology, and lots more besides those. So there are lots of different areas that our interns go into after the year. We're going to talk a little bit now about how to apply for the internships. And I'm going to share my screen again as we do that so that I can give you a bit of a sense about what to expect. So, the first thing that I want to share with you is the application process as it starts. So the easiest way to find the application process is to go to our website, jpit.uk/internship, and you will find a screen that looks a little bit like this. And if you press that top button, that green button, then that enables you to start the application process. You will then come through to this page, which is the recruitment platform, and you can enter your email address, or a really easy way to sign up is to do that through LinkedIn or your Google account as well. Then some of the details are filled in for you. But before you do that, you might just want to scroll down on this page and have a read of some of the details of the role, which will become important as you go through your application. So you might even want to click the Apply Now button into a new tab to enable you to keep that open and have a look at the details of the role. And I'm about to show you why. So I pretended to apply. I did it through LinkedIn, so it filled in some of my demographic things for me. And when you scroll down the application page, you get to a bit that is personal qualities, skills, and experience. And I just want to share that whilst the kind of tick box bits above are important, this bit is absolutely essential, and how you answer these questions will be a big part of how we make the decision about who to shortlist for the internship. So there's 3 questions here, and they're long form. So you can write up to 350 words for the first and last one, and 500 words for the middle one. And they are: tell us about a change you would like to see in the world and why. What skills and experience could you bring to this role? And how do you see that this experience benefiting your growth and development? And don't worry too much about that last question. It's okay and even good to show areas of weakness, because internships are about your growth as well. So please do really have a think about those questions as you apply, because they'll give the panel plenty to think about and to ask you about if we invite you to interview. You will also see at the end that there's a little demographic section. I just wanted to ensure you that that bit will not be attached to your name. So we won't be able to see your personal demographics, but what it does enable us to do is to monitor diversity, because we're really keen to constantly grow the diversity of the team. So that is something that we're thinking about really seriously this year. If you want to pause and come back to any of the questions, you can click the Save Application for Later button, or otherwise go ahead and click the green button to submit your application. What will happen then is we'll go into a shortlisting process. So just to explain that, we don't see the names of people as we're shortlisting them, or those personal details. What we do see is how you've answered those questions, and that enables us to shortlist some people for interview. Lots of people apply, so shortlisting can be really difficult, but that's something that the interview panel do before you come to interview. And then if you are invited to interview, you will be asked to come to Methodist Church House in London for an interview. And I thought I'd show you a bit about what that looks like, because I know it can be a bit strange going to a new place for an interview, or certainly I found it a bit strange when I interviewed for my role. around this time last year. So the first picture you see there is the outside of Church House with the ramp and steps up to the main entrance. And then the next picture you can see is the place called Charterhouse, which is a kind of cafe area where you'll be able to go and wait if you're a little bit early for an interview. Then in the bottom corner, you can see our reception desk, where a lovely receptionist will greet you and show you where to go. And the three people on that screen are myself, Thomas, and Erica. So I will be part of the interview panel along with two colleagues, and Thomas and Erica will be there to greet you and spend time with you during various bits of the day. So that's some friendly faces as well for the process. What will happen if you are invited to interview is that you will have a short exercise to do on the day, which involves various bits and pieces. You'll then do a presentation, which you'll be sent details about ahead of time and going into an interview. So I can't share all of the details of that just now, but I thought it would be good to give you just a little bit of a sense of what to expect on the day if you get called to interview. So I'm going to stop sharing now. One more thing that we often get quite a lot of questions around is kind of working patterns and what it's like to work in the team. So we all are based in Methodist Church House, where you've just seen the pictures of. That's me and the interns and three other team members. We then have denominational team members also based at URC Church House, also in London, and Baptist Church House, which is a bit further away. But you would be based in London, and we have a 40% on-site policy. So what that means is that effectively 2 days out of every week, you would be in London or on-site somewhere else doing some on-site work. And then the other 3 days of the week, you would have the option to work from home. People do that variously. So some people do work in the office a little bit more. Personally, I've found the balance of having those 2 days in person where I have a lot of face-to-face meetings and you can book a desk. But often actually we don't book a desk. We just spend the whole day downstairs because there's so much conversation to be had. And then the balance between that and home days, where actually I might have more Teams meetings and also get quite a lot of my computer-based work done, is really helpful for me. But I also love an office in London. There are lots of good cafes and too many good bookshops near the office. So there are lots of places to go when you're not working. There's also a roof garden in the building, which is quite exciting. So those are some of the ways we work. We also do travel a little bit. So we have conferences and events and are often speaking at churches as well. So there'll be some opportunities to travel too. We have team meetings once every 2 weeks. So that's when the whole team comes together and you can see everyone in person, or most people in person. And then on the other weeks, we have a catch up with each other on Teams. So it's a very sociable bunch of folks that you'd be working with. If you have any questions between now and the time of the if you have any questions between now and the application's closing, please do feel free to email us at hello@jpit.uk, hello@jpit.uk, and we can answer your questions. But for now, we're going to give a few moments for questions from the floor. And I just wonder if I unspotlight myself, and we can have a little bit of a conversation while folks are thinking of those questions to ask. So if you do have questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A, and we won't name you in the conversation, but we'll be able to answer those questions. Erica and Thomas, are there any questions that you had when you were thinking about applying that you don't think we've talked about today? I know I'm putting you on the spot again.
I think I remember wondering, like you said, Alex, about kind of events and travel, and how much that would be possible or expected. And I think it's maybe important to say that travel outside standard working hours is generally optional, and you won't be asked to work every single weekend going to a church in Cornwall or Scotland or something. All very optional, but very good development opportunities. And actually, I forgot to say that kind of that ability to travel around and visit lots of different churches and different events was something that attracted me in the first place, as I said. So a good opportunity.
Yeah, I can't think of any specific questions I had, but it might be worth saying I remember thinking a bit about the different roles that were offered last year, because you may have picked up on the fact that I said that I'm the communications intern and Thomas said that he's the intern for the Constituency Action Network. And those titles aren't the same for this round of applications. So if you're wondering about the specific tasks that you'll have in your role, it's not quite going to look the same as for us. But yeah, so my responsibility is in communications. I don't know if Alex or Simeon want to say a bit more about that, to add any extra clarification, but I thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, so just to say we've opened up the roles for lots of reasons, but the main one actually is that we want to get to know you. We want to get to know the people who apply and actually think about what your skills and interests are and make sure that we can really build a program around you. With Erica and Thomas, I think we started with two very clear roles and have done that process gradually of finding the right things that work for you. But this time we're going to tailor a bit more to individuals, and that will mean in the application process we'll be able to think a little bit about what might work for you, but also then for those who do end up in the internships, there's always a period for the first wee while of induction, and during that induction we'll chat a bit more about the various jobs that there are to do and what your interests are, and try to match things up as best as we can so that we cover all of the work that needs done, but we're still making sure that folks can do the things that particularly interest them. I don't know, Simeon, if there's anything you want to add on that, or just anything from your experience of working with interns for a lot longer than me, that you would like to share before we close.
Oh, I noticed we've also had a question in, so we must get to that as well. But I guess there's two things to say. One is please apply. It's a brilliant opportunity. I don't think there are many people who come to JPIT and have regretted joining, and many people have really gone on, as you say, shared, Alex, to go and do very exciting things on the back of the experiences they've had with us in the team, and they're still ambassadors for our work in their other places too. The other thing is, I think it might be worth stressing that to have a really good look at the job description and the person specification for the internship, particularly the person specification, because that is the basis on which the panel will be shortlisting. So it lists a whole kind of range of skills and experiences and interests that we're looking for. And the way the panel have to work through the number of applications that they get is to score people against those criteria. So when you're writing in those kind of three sections of the application form, which Alex showed you, really think about how you would meet each of those skills or experiences based on what you've done before. And don't worry if you can't for some of them, because very few people manage to get maximum marks on a shortlisting grid. Otherwise, it would be really hard to choose between people. So even if you're not sure you've got something to say on every single criteria, do think about those criteria as you write your application.
Yeah, it definitely is an important one though, because there were some people last year who I loved their answers, but if they don't match the criteria, then we don't have a space in the grid to just say, well, I just really loved their answers. So it's really worth doing. So we've had a question around whether there's opportunities for hands-on work with people the campaigns represent. I think in part it depends on what's going on at any given time, but we're really trying to build our lived experience work. So there was a lot of direct lived experience work in the conference that folks could do. And just after I joined, there was also a poverty roundtable, which was a really good opportunity to do some of that work with folks who have lived experience. But I think I'd say that's somewhere we're still growing. And if an intern had interest in kind of getting some experience in a particular lived experience area, we would make sure that happened as well through the partners we work with. So we work with lots of lived experience organizations who are able to offer some of those experiences as well. Is there anything else you'd say around that, Simeon, before I answer the other question? And Thomas, I see your hand up as well. Maybe I'll come to you first then, and then Simeon.
Right, yeah, and I'd highlight that I agree with all that, but that me and Erica have just got a place on a migration discussion initiative for a few days in May, which is being run by the Council for World Mission, which is a mission agency linked to one of our churches, the United Reformed Church, and that discussion for youth all over Europe that we're participating in does actually include an exposure visit to a community-run interfaith refugee project, I believe. So through the initiatives that we've found, and that's a particular event, that will give opportunity. So I think it comes back to it's partly the intern responsibility to find what you're passionate about and areas that you might be able to get involved in gaining some lived experience. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I would just say, just to point out and be clear that the JPIT's work is not practical work largely with people experiencing injustice. It's more focused on the systems change, policy and advocacy work. But we know that all good work around justice starts with deep listening to the experiences of those who are most affected by injustice. So I think what we've just been talking about over the last few minutes is really about how we do some of that listening and ensure that our advocacy and policy work is really well informed by those who have lived experience of the issues.
Exactly. And I think one of the key differences between the kind of social action work and social justice work is kind of that what we're doing is less service provision and more listening in order to affect change. And that's kind of the key difference. We've had another question, and it's about is it possible to live outside of London and commute a couple of days a week? And it absolutely is. So Thomas commutes at the moment, I think it's about an hour. Is that right, Thomas? A little bit less.
No,
More?
more. It's a little bit longer, to be honest, given the trains. But it can be anything from between an hour and an hour and a half, depending. But yeah, I don't live in London, and several members of the team don't either, so it's absolutely possible.
And I commute a little bit further than that again. So there are people who commute. I think what I'd say is there's a bit of a cap on it because you do need to do the 2 days in London. So it's about thinking realistically about how far away you can live and still feel comfortably able to do that. But we do have relatively flexible working times. So I think it is possible to commute from up to around an hour and a half away.
And we have in the past had people who lived a bit further away but were able to come down to London for 2 days a week and stay with friends, for instance, and do the 2 days a week in that way. But I think it is a bit trickier, and you probably have slightly fewer opportunities because lots of the events and things that you can join in with are things that are happening in the evenings in London.
Absolutely. So if you do have any questions for us after today, please do feel free to drop us an email. Just to say again, it's hello@jpit.uk if you have any other questions. And thank you for joining us. This will be up on YouTube if you want to look at any of the details again. And for now, I'd like to just bring us to a close with a prayer for us all as this process continues. So let's pray. God, you created each one of us and continue to breathe life and inspiration into us and all that we do. Be with us in this period of discernment as we wonder what next, who next, where next, how next. Breathe hope. Breathe possibility. Breathe creativity. Breathe new life. In Jesus' name, amen. So thank you. I hope we'll hear from you soon, and take care.